do you believe Jesus was born a virgin?
Dude, you gotta be kidding me.
Remarkable.
Let's stick to the virgin birth.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Let's stick to the virgin birth, Jordan.
the virgin birth results from a mistranslation of Isaiah. You know that.
Like these sorts of questions. What would you say? They don't strike me as, they're not getting to the point.
I know.
No. What the? Yeah. Okay.
It's a moral question, and
I know that's exactly.
And I was dealing with a factual question, which is, did Jesus have a father? And you won't answer it.
Well,
It's a different kind of question.
You won't answer it.
Father and a heavenly father, like almost all mythological heroes.
So he wasn't born of a virgin then? So you're saying that Jesus was not born of a virgin?
I said, first of all, that I don't...
I can't get over this.
I don't know how to mediate the fact-value dichotomy in that case. I said the same thing about the resurrection.
It's not a value, it's a simple fact. I mean, did a man have intercourse with Mary and produce Jesus? That's a factual question.
I can't get over how funny this is.
It's not a value question.
You must understand what you're being asked here. That
Alex, like, dude, I love you, dude. If we ever get to interview, man, I can't wait to pick your freaking brain, bro. You're funny as hell. Do you believe Jesus died for our sins? Richard Dawkins confronts Jordan Peterson in this video. Alex O'Connor, I believe, is the host, the middlemaning this conversation between these two big figures in the known world. And we're going to be flies on the wall today, checking out what they have to say.
Do you believe that as a fact, that Jesus died for our sins?
There are elements of the texts that I don't claim to understand. What my experience has been that the more deeply I look into these texts, the more I learned. That doesn't mean that I can proclaim full knowledge of what the texts proclaim.
This is an interesting point already, because you can glean any piece of material and continue to learn new things out of it. So it's like a believer's kind of thing, like they constantly nurture that material and new meanings come out of this literature. But
I don't think, and I'm not trying to play a trick here. You know, I watched an interview that you did recently where you were talking, I think it was with Piers Morgan, about the complexities of trying to understand this strange realm of quantum phenomena, right? And we have a trouble with quantum phenomena because at the micro level, things don't act like things act at the macro level. So they escape our intuitions. And one of the things you said was that although it's perhaps even impossible for creatures embodied like us to get a grip on quantum phenomena, the strange wave-particle duality, for example, we have ample evidence that it works, and stellarly. And I would say exactly the same thing about the biblical texts.
So, wow. That's a big leap for me.
Because they run into a mystery, like there's a horizon of mystery, which I do not claim to penetrate, but insofar as I've been able to understand the text, every time I make a improvement in understanding, it reveals something to me that's just like shattering.
Quantum physics is deeply mysterious, and you're saying that biblical texts are deeply mysterious. The difference is quantum physics, the predictions you derive from quantum physics are fulfilled to the umpteenth decimal place. Mm-hmm. The umpteenth decimal place, I mean, I think it was Richard Feynman says, equivalent to predicting the width of North America to the nearest hair's breadth. Mm-hmm, now, right. That's impressive. That's
no doubt.
No doubt. Look at his face right now. Like, dude, I can't help it. Sorry, y'all. I'm picking fun here. I'm picking fun. But I can't help it. One is clearly measured in a measurable scientific manner. The other is what tried and subjectively works out for people who apply it to their life. And then for some, it doesn't seem to pan out.
The mystery there as it were, gains its credentials by its predictions. The mysteries of the Bible don't have any credentials at all, as far as I can make out.
Well, I guess the credentials that I would put, you made a statement a couple of months ago that I found very interesting. And I don't claim to understand it, and I'm not.
Do those chairs not look, at least with Jordan, the way he's sitting up, it feels like we're in a weird, like, I don't know. It just looks like he's too big for the chair in a weird way. I don't know if you guys see what I'm seeing, but.
Trying to put you on the spot with it. You said that you were a cultural Christian. Okay, and so that raised a number of questions in my mind. And the first question was,
you are changing the subject.
No, I'm not. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I may be leaping outside of the topic a bit to get back to it.
We can do cultural Christianity, but I think, because I have a list of questions that you wanted to ask, and that is one of them. But I think Professor Dawkins did ask you...
You're referring to the predictive power and to the utility of the stories.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's actually what I was trying to zero in on. Okay, so that was the point. Well, it seemed to me that your proclamation that you were a cultural Christian was a recognition and a statement that you had found something in the culture that had been derived from Christianity that you had an affinity with.
Yeah, but that could be the fact that he was just born and raised into a culture that was Christian. Of course, you're going to typically have an affinity with the culture you're raised in. That's typically the answer they do bring up. If you were born in India, you'd be a Hindu, most likely. If you were born in a Muslim country, Muslim. The list goes on.
And that there's some reason for that. And one of the things I wanted to ask you is, well, what do you think that Christianity got right that allows you to make a statement like that? I mean, I know.
I don't see how Christianity would have to get, other than the fact that Christianity has stopped, burning people at the stake and committing the atrocities hundreds of years ago they did on average, on norm, like a norm. You're now at liberty to be able to express these ideas and whatnot. Maybe that allowment. I don't know.
I know that there's differences, perhaps, in what we both think about the ultimate veracity of the biblical stories. Maybe there isn't differences. Like, it would take a lot of conversation to figure this out.
But he's dodging the mathematic point that Richard brought up all along.
Oh, but what did you mean by that? Like, what do you think that Christianity got right that would enable you to make a statement like that?
Virtually nothing. I meant by that no more than that I'm brought up in a Christian culture. I went to Christian schools. I therefore know my way around the Bible. I know my way around the Book of Common Prayer. I know the hymns. That's all. I don't value Christianity as a truth system at all.
Okay, so let me ask you about that.
I mean, that is just a blunt, straightforward answer. I can respect it.
Because maybe that's true and perhaps it's not. So the first question is, like, do you think that there are any marked differences between cultural traditions that would enable you to rank order them in terms of their ethical validity?
Yes.
Dude, Jordan's face is looking pretty rough. He got really intense there.
So for example, we could contrast mainstream UK Christianity with Islamic fundamentalism.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a hierarchy.
There is a hierarchy.
Okay, a hierarchy that points to what?
Well, in the case of Islam, I dislike any religion which punishes apostasy with death, that throws gay people off high buildings, that practices clitoridectomy. That seems to me to place Islam on a lower level than Christianity, but that's not to say anything very positive about Christianity.
Well, it might be to say something positive about Christianity. Like, I think that question...
Dude, Jordan is a funny guy, man.
Question is open, because you might ask yourself, what did Christianity get right that led it away from those particular presumptions and towards something that you regard as more ethically appropriate? Like, this isn't a trivial question.
It's a very modest claim. There's not very much. I mean, to be better than a religion that throws gay people off high buildings is not really a very virtuous achievement.
I don't know. I don't know if that's true, because...
Oh, man. You can't tell me this guy is not an apologist somehow deep down. He has to have this thing be true, it feels like.
If you look at the barbarism that characterizes the human past, you might think that any progression whatsoever towards something approximating mercy and tolerance is nothing short of a bloody miracle.
Well,
like, people are pretty pretty ruthless, and so are our chimpanzee cousins.
Yes, they are.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so we move forward into the light with great difficulty.
Yes,
And
yes.
So because I get what Jordan's doing here, but there's so many other ethical systems that also do this. So, I just think he has this super high value of this particular world religion, and doesn't really take the time, I think, to like even out that value to other ethical systems or religious systems.
fact that we can take that for granted now, and that it seems self-evident and deserving of faint praise, it's not so clear to me that that's a reasonable proposition.
Okay.
So I should just go ahead and start a cult tomorrow, starting off with not, hating your mother, father, sister, brother to come follow me, not to take up your cross and suffer in that respect, something that's a healthy system that potentially will help you with your health, something that will help you feel fulfilled spiritually, psychologically, something that will unify us, that will have a common ethical purpose, will have a mythos that is known to be a mythos, that is not meant to be understood literally in the most literal fashion, but it teaches truth in a parabolic sense. And I could create a cult better than Christianity right now, and then would Jordan then be my apologist?
Let's grant the faint praise, but that has nothing to do with the truth value. And what I care about is the truth value. I see no truth value in the claims of Christianity, the virgin birth, the resurrection, the miracles. Do you believe in any of those? Do you believe Jesus was born a virgin?
Dude, you gotta be kidding me. Why is this like, oh my, it's just, maybe I'm so far like away from thinking that happened that this is just absurd that he pauses like this with all the times he's kind of come close to just saying no in some respects, but he can't just say, okay, I don't think it happened, but I think there's some value in here. I think there's some depth and truth. He knows his constituency is made up of mostly Christians, and that would be a problem.
As I said before, there are elements of the text that I don't feel qualified to comment on. My experience has been that the more, I know.
It's not about what you know, it's what you believe. He asked, do you believe? You know whether or not you believe something to be the case or not. It's just dishonest rhetoric.
From a metaphorical perspective and from a mythic perspective, what the story of the virgin birth means. And I accept that. I know, for example, that any culture that doesn't hold the image of the woman and infant sacred dies. And I don't know how that needs to be expressed in a form.
True, though?
Do you mean that you don't know?
Well,
Hold on. Mormonism hasn't died. And I'm not so sure there's like an infant miracle. His mother was not impregnated by the divinity, and it hasn't died. So I'm pretty sure we can fact check that as false. But let's see how this goes.
let me ask you about that, because truth, this is something I talked with Sam Harris about too. Truth, as we know, is a tricky business. Do you think there are differences in the truth claims between different writers of fiction?
Dude,
Like, is
Jordan's face is pissed looking.
Dostoevsky more profound than
Well, I wouldn't call fiction truth claims anyway. I mean, these are...
then on what grounds do we rank order the fiction in terms of quality? Like, Dostoevsky is a profound purveyor of fiction on the philosophical front, unbelievably deep and profound.
Yes,
There's
but
something true about what he's writing about.
it's nothing to do with the truth that science is concerned with. The truth of science is the truth that gets us to the moon. I mean, this is nothing to do with whether one writer of fiction has a sort of insight into human nature. That goes without saying. I accept that.
Okay, so how do we deal with the notion that on the purely factual side, how do we deal with the idea? Let's take you talked about clitoridectomy. Let's talk about the oppression of women.
Yes.
We make a scientific case that that's inappropriate? Or is it a case that we're making on some other grounds? Like, I see in the Judeo-Christian tradition, one of the earliest pronouncements is that both men and women carry the image of God, both. And that sets a certain tone to...
By the way, Greeks had that as well. I mean, they literally had the divine spark, both male and female. in their creation stories, they're split in half, and Genesis may actually be hinting to some degree with this idea in one of the creation myths in Genesis where both male and female from his side may be split from it. But there's also the notion of the rib, and that is another pun potentially coming from Mesopotamian origins. So it's just like anything to defend the castle of Christianity, even though it sounds to me, he doesn't literally believe it in a sense that it happened. It sounds like he wants to play metaphors and Jungian kind of archetypes and symbolisms and mythical material, things like that.
Everything that follows. And it is a remarkable proclamation given its radical age, that both men and women carry the image of God and are to be treated as something with intrinsic value.
Women were treated with intrinsic value in the Greek and Roman societies as well. But mind you, too, tell your women to be silent in the church. Tell your women to submit to the husband, right? There's a lot of their roles in this process make them, if you will, not the authorities in the household.
Side of the domain of power and politics. And it isn't obvious to me, having thought about this a lot, how we deal with that in the pure realm of fact. Because one of the facts is, if I can oppress you, why the hell shouldn't I?
Yeah, my job is to keep things on track here. I think there are a number of questions which Professor Dawkins has asked quite directly that we still haven't really heard an answer to.
Okay.
And Professor Dawkins asking about the virgin birth. You started talking about metaphor, you started talking about myth. I think anybody listening to this conversation will understand that maybe a society that doesn't believe in the virgin birth won't work. Maybe that's the predictive power that you're talking about. But I think you must understand that when Professor Dawkins is asking you, do you believe that Jesus was born of a virgin? He means something like a biological fact. And by the way, saying I don't know, or saying, I'm not qualified to comment, is an answer to that question. But is that your answer, that you don't know?
I said earlier, and I would hold to this, is that there are elements of the text that I don't know that I'm incapable of fully accounting for. I can't account for what I'm
glad he's not a New Testament, scholar writing any commentary, because no one would get anywhere reading a single thing Jordan would put into some kind of, here's this pericope and here's how we elaborate what it seems to be saying and potentially its meaning for its original audience. Hell nah.
Fundamental reality and significance of the notion of the resurrection is my knowledge just ends.
Sure, but
I know that whatever happened as a consequence of the origination and the promotion of the Christian story was powerful enough to bring Rome to its knees and demolish the pagan enterprise.
Dude, like there's so much social, political, civil war, absolute economic crises and a gradual degradation of the empire, and likely not due to Christianity in its original phases. Eventually, once they've had long enough civil war and collapsed through all these other means, Christianity did not help resurrect the empire. They collapsed it. Now you've adopted a new philosophy where people in power are now taking it. I feel like a lot of dishonesty takes place in these kind of conversations when you're like listening to someone who's doing an apologetic for the particular worldview. That's what it seems like.
So there's some power in that story that's remarkable.
Let's stick to the virgin birth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's stick to the virgin birth, Jordan.
The virgin birth results from a mistranslation of Isaiah. You know that.
Like these sorts of questions. What would you say? They don't strike me as. They're not getting to the point.
I know.
No. What the? Yeah. Okay.
The story has a purpose. Yes. Well, and look, I understand that there's perfect reasons to debate this. I know that. And I know that your question is more than valid, but it's beside the issue as far as I'm concerned. And it's partly because, well, when we started this conversation, I said, for example, that it appears to be the case that a description of the structure through which we see the world is a story. We see the world through a story. And so that's a remarkable thing. That's a remarkable discovery, and it's emerged probably in the last 16 years.
I wonder what Alex and Richard are honestly thinking in their head. But what about the virgin birth? I mean, like, just why can't you really honestly answer this? And he has to do this whole humans see the world in a narrative way. You know, we all are kind of living out a story. I get it. We're narrative creatures, social creatures who like to see things in a narrative way. So maybe the story speaks to you. It's not a hard question, though. It's honestly not hard, Jordan. Do you believe it probably happened, or do you not? And you answered that when Alex asked you about the resurrection, when he finally said something about if a video camera was out there, probably the guy would have walked out of the grave. We'll have to react to that too.
60 years in multiple disciplines, because we have to prioritize our facts. And so we prioritize them according to a particular pattern. And there are patterns that seem to work and to propagate themselves properly and to orient cultures towards life abundant. And there are other patterns, the pattern of Cain, for example, that lead to absolute bloody devastation. And I don't know exactly how to construe that sort of truth, but we talked about the oppression of women, for example. It's like, how do you make a case on purely factual grounds that women should be treated as equals?
It's a moral question. And
I know that's exactly.
And I was dealing with a factual question, which is, did Jesus have a father? And you won't answer it.
Well,
it's a different kind of question.
You won't answer it.
And a heavenly father, like almost all mythological heroes.
So he wasn't born of a virgin then? So you're saying that Jesus was not born of a virgin?
I said, first of all, that I don't...
I can't get over this.
I don't know how to mediate the fact-value dichotomy in that case. I said the same thing about the resurrection.
It's not a value. It's a simple fact. I mean, did a man have intercourse with Mary and produce Jesus? That's a factual question.
I can't get over how funny this is.
It's not a value question.
You must understand what you're being asked here. That
Alex, like, dude, I love you, dude. If we ever get to interview, man, I can't wait to pick your freaking brain, bro. You're funny as hell.
That even if you think that, say, the author of the biblical texts intended much more significance than a simple scientific analysis of events, Professor Dawkins is interested in scientific truth. That's the kind of truth that he's interested in. And even if you think it's irrelevant to the point of what the gospel authors were getting at, that first needs to be clarified before you can then begin actually uncovering what the stories are about. So I think Professor Dawkins is asking from a scientific perspective, and maybe you think that scientific approach is wrong, but if you just take it for a moment, maybe this is how we find out that it is wrong. Let's take a scientific approach, ask the question, did this occur?
I think that it's inappropriate to use a question like that to attempt to undermine the validity of the entire, what would you say, deep mythological enterprise.
You don't. Jordan, you don't. I know that many people with chips on their shoulders will say it didn't happen, haha, stupid, silly story. I got it. But just the same way you're pulling an apologetic and attempting to not answer a real question, you know what they're asking, you can say, no, that never happened historically, but that's never been the point or the intention. The story is trying to tell something more metaphysical or something deeper about the whole human dilemma. You can talk in mythical terms while granting historicity, factual based of what actually happened did not occur. And you can do that. You can give your opinion about it. You can say, I'm not sure this is what I think. I think he might have. I think he didn't. It's that simple.
Well, suppose we weren't doing that. Suppose we were asking out of interest. Suppose that we were all here devout Christians, maybe even Jungian Christians, and we thought, this is interesting, over dinner. Do you think it really happened, like scientifically? Would your answer just be, I don't know?
Yes.
And you wouldn't consider it, I mean, it's not an inappropriate question to ask just on a point of interest.
Right.
Did this really occur? And I think so often people are asking you that, and especially given the context of this conversation, we've heard everything that you're saying about metaphor and myth, but because the question is still then being asked, did it really happen? You know that that's what you're being asked. And the way you just so easily said yes, I wonder why you struggle to do that in so many other circumstances.
I think because I don't look at the situation the same. The way that Dr. Dawkins and I look at the situation are really quite different and at many, many, many levels. You know, so even on the meme question, for example, you know, like I know the literature on the history of religious ideas. I see how these ideas have battled across millennia in a manner that is very reminiscent to me of the same sort of claim that Dr. Dawkins is putting forward with regards to meme. I know that literature. Dr. Dawkins doesn't know that literature. And it's very difficult for me to communicate from within the confines of that literature because it's extensive and deep.
No, I know that you may not be able to give the value, the truth value that you're trying to describe. That's a lesson that you're learning that's deep about the ancient myth and narrative that you find so valuable. You may not be able to give that kind of perception to someone like Dawkins, who may have more of a chip on his shoulder and see no use for the ancient tales of old. But if you were factual, stand-up, honest in terms of the actual case of what seems to be likely, that this is not historical, but it's mythological, then maybe you and him can have common ground and then go from there and extrapolate because you have common ground. The problem is, I think, that Jordan struggles between his perception of how the rest of his audience and viewers are going to hear him, and they hear him say, no, I don't think that happened, no, the resurrection, no, the virgin birth, that might damage potentially that audience from listening to what he has to say versus the skeptical scientific community that I think he's more akin, if you got him off record, behind closed doors, and really pinned him feet to the fire, I personally think that Jordan would be like, look, I don't know. No one can know with certainty, but based on the track record of all the other mythic and legendary tales of old, it may be just another one that's mimicking that in narrative form. However, I think there's some truth value to all of this, and we need to explain that truth value. But just, you can't even, no one really is going to listen to you and describe the metaphysics of these ancient languages and how they influence culture and all that. None of that really matters if you can't even answer a simple, straightforward question. It just sounds like you're purposely bloviating away from the facts.
And we're dealing with things that we don't understand the relationship between metaphoric truth and value predicated truth and factual truth. We don't understand that. It's a big problem. We cannot, there's no evidence whatsoever from the scientific perspective that we can orient ourselves in the world merely in consequence of the facts.
Sure.
And that's a fact. And it's a fact that's been detailed out in great detail in the last 60 years by people from a variety of different disciplines. We have to prioritize the facts. That's a value hierarchy. There may be true and false ways of prioritizing facts, but you can't determine the truth or falsehood of the way that you prioritize facts by making reference to the facts. That's a big problem.
Okay, let's talk about that as perhaps a slight detour here, because I think we do need to come back to this Christ resurrection thing. But Professor Dawkins, would you say that underlying the scientific enterprise is a fundamentally unscientific assumption? You can make scientific investigations in the world, but in order to do so, you need to choose what to prioritize. You need to choose what to investigate. You also need to value the truth. You need to have a value and a motivation for doing it in the first place. Those kinds of things cannot themselves be scientifically justified. And so does the scientific enterprise have an unscientific assumption of the space?
I suppose it does. I mean, I think that maybe just be Jordan and Richard, by the way, but I think that Jordan prioritizes myth and I prioritize fact. And
Jordan nodded to that. He's in the hot seat a little.
I think myth is kind of vaguely interesting, but it's not the be-all and end-all of my life. I think it's somewhat secondary to scientific fact, the sort of facts that tell us how old the universe is, how old the world is, the history of life, the engineering achievements of landing a spacecraft on a comet. These are the things that science can do. And as I said, the predictions of quantum theory, to come back to that, the predictions of quantum theory, which are verified to a sufficient number of decimal places that it's equivalent to predicting the width of North America to one hair's breadth. Now, that is, however difficult quantum theory is to understand, that is what you can get from quantum theory. Now, the mysteries of the Bible, if they are mysteries, aren't in the same league. I mean, they just don't cut it.
Look, ladies and gentlemen, you saw it. Jordan was tiptoeing out of that. I actually hear both. I like mythology. I think it's absolutely necessary. It helps us unify, finding lessons. It's a way to deliver teachings, morals, etc. So many things. You could even potentially have myths teach lessons about science if you wanted. But and both gentlemen have a completely different outlook. But at the end of the day, when you can't answer a simple, straightforward question and you got to kind of do all this other gymnastics, it doesn't help your cause on trying to get others to see the myth as well. Tell me what you think. Comment down below what your thoughts are on that discussion. I think it's hilarious. Personally, we got to go react at the Jordan Peterson resurrection with Alex O'Connor next. I really need to go see that now that I saw this. Like the video. Hey, subscribe and check the bell so YouTube will notify you. They won't notify you every time I drop a video if you don't check the bell. And also make sure you comment. It lets the algorithm know, hey, people like this material. They want to see more of it. Share it out there. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, see you then.